Okay, Senator, we are live. We have attendees. Okay,
Thank you. Welcome. I'm Senator James Gray. Today we will be having public hearings on Senate Bills 84, 85, and 88. But before we get started, I will read through the checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical occasion to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom webinar for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and listen to the meeting on Zoom and YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information in accordance with the meeting for access to the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with the access. If anyone has a problem, please call, email remote senate at leg.senate.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn and reschedule. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Finally, let us start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during the meeting. This is required under the right to know law. Call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
I am in my home, in my office / kitchen, and my husband is in the office upstairs, and I will be having the puppy with me shortly.
Senator Warden.
I'm at my home in Stoddard, and I'm alone in the room.
Senator Susie.
Good morning, Donna Susie. I am at my home in Manchester and I am alone.
Senator Perkins Woka.
Good morning, Senator Perkins Quokka. I am in my office in downtown Portsmouth and I'm alone in the room.
And I am Senator Gray. I'm in my home in Rochester and I'm alone in this room. All right. The first bill that we have is Senate Bill 84. Do we have the prime sponsor on the line?
Yes, we do.
All right. Senator Reagan.
Hi, Senator John Reagan from the Senate District 17. And I bring before you today Senate Bill 84, an act adopting omnibus legislation relative to the posting of notices on land and relative to public bodies. This is a constituent, my part of this is a constituent requested bill to change what they felt was an oversight in the posting requirements. And they're separated this into two parts to separate the part that allows painting purple paint on your property as a matter of posting. And I'd be happy to take questions.
Oh, you're muted, Senator Gray.
Does anyone on the committee have questions of the sponsor? All right. Who else do we have for sponsors of the various parts?
For part 3, we would have Senator Waters.
Senator Waters,
One moment. Senator Waters. Senator Waters?
Yes, this is Senator Waters, District 4, and I introduced the third part of this bill. What it simply does is creates a new section under RSA 53 to clarify those public bodies which are subject to the right to know. So the language reads that every legislative body, governing body, board, commission, or committee, and here's the particular interest for this bill, of any village district established under this chapter shall be a public body under RSA 91A and shall be subject to all applicable provisions of that charter. This arose because of difficulties in getting certain village districts. In my district, particularly a water district that was not posting public meetings, was not allowing the public to see minutes, or perhaps not keeping minutes either. And when the residents of the community went to the Secretary of State and others to ask for assistance in enforcing that, there was some feeling that the statute wasn't clear enough. So what this does, it makes it very explicit that whatever kind of governing body you are, then you are required to meet the rules under 91A. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
thank you. Does the committee have any questions? Seeing none. All right. Kristen?
All right, next we have Senator Gaida signed up to testify. I don't see him in here, probably because of Ways and Means. So the next person we would have signed up to testify is Christina Snyder. I also don't see her on our attendees list.
All right. Senator Birdsell, I see that Ways and Means is moving along, so I'm going to turn over control of the meeting to you at this time. I will be back.
Okay.
So if there's
Go ahead.
anybody else, if anybody else would like to testify at this time, if they could please raise their hand and we can call on you individually. And I am seeing one hand for Patrick Hackley. Would you like me to bring him in?
Yes, please.
Sure. Mr. Hackley, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Patrick Hackley. Can you hear me okay?
We
Yes.
can. And
Right.
Mr. Hackley, if you could just introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. As I mentioned, my name is Patrick Hackley. I'm the recently appointed director for the New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands. We did provide some testimony. I just realized this morning that it was addressed, I think it was addressed to the wrong committee. So I would ask if the committee members have seen that. It was just a one-page submitted last Friday to the committee.
I can look into the folder. Hang on one second.
Yeah, we were quickly providing testimony to other committees, and we did not properly change the chairmanship or the committee it should have been sent to.
Okay, I do not have it, Mr. Hackley.
Okay.
You know which committee you sent it to, because they would usually forward it on.
Yeah, I sent it to the Science, Technology, and Energy Committee of the House.
Oh, okay.
So we really,
Yeah,
so
get that
yeah,
one.
it's a rookie mistake. But I can give you a brief. It's very brief. We were not going to we don't take a position on it. We just wanted to express some concerns from the state land management agency relative to boundaries. We maintain over 1,000 miles worth of boundaries in the state on state lands and reservations, so we have some pretty in-depth knowledge about that. And of course, we abut some lands that are posted on occasion. So if I could just mention a few things that were outlined in my letter, and I'll make sure I get that to you afterwards, Tricia. Okay, I'll get the right
Sure.
link this time. Yeah, so basically the purple boundary paint, I just learned, I mean, I've been practicing forestry in New Hampshire for over 30 years, and it is a rare, uncommon practice in New Hampshire to denote posted land with purple paint. As I understand from talking to our survey department, that is a practice that's done in the Midwest apparently. But it is something completely uncommon and probably would not be widely recognized, even if it were to be instituted through this bill, if it were to become law. Posted signs are well recognized, can be easily added or removed as the landowner desires, as opposed to permanent paint and marking, blazing and painting purple. Posted signs are typically the way to go and have served their purpose well, by and large, is just an opinion of our survey staff and our foresters in general. As far as the landowner's name and address being on the posted signs, again, this is not a position, it's just a concern we have, is that the communication is really helpful out there in the woods, and there are times when hunters need to contact the landowner to retrieve game that may have been wounded or killed and landed on posted property. So that facilitates that. Sometimes temporary access is needed across posted land with the permission of that landowner for forestry operations. So that's another way to facilitate, is by having the name on the sign. And then a third means of communication with the name on the sign is for forest fire fighting. There are times when we need to access private land with, again, permission of the private landowner, and having that name on the sign is helpful. So that's basically the comments summarized from the letter I submitted to the wrong committee.
So do any of the members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Hackley? Senator Susie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I just ask, is there another recognized color? Is the issue that it's purple, or is the issue more that it's paint being used to denote the posting?
It's a good question. There is not, to my knowledge, a standard color for posted land.
Okay.
As far as I know, and I can check with our survey staff, but it's up to the landowner to decide what color they choose to paint their boundaries. Typically, I've seen it all, but typically yellow, blaze orange, and red are the common boundaries. Actually, our state uses blue, which would not be my favorite, but the state uses blue to denote their boundaries. But I'm unaware of any paint that's dedicated solely to posted land in the Northeast, at least.
So if I may follow up, so then the concern is that the painting alone may not trigger the appropriate message, may not be recognizable as a signal that it's posted.
That would be our point, Senator Susie. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I do have one. So you're not in favor of the purple paint, but you are in favor of requiring contact info of the owners. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator Birdsell. The bill, as you see, proposes to make it optional, and currently it's required of posted signs. So we would like to see that stay. Again, facilitate communication. Having more communication with landowners than less, I think, is what we would prefer.
Do you know of any reason why why someone wouldn't want? Well, I guess there's plenty of reasons, but have you seen any situations where the owner would not want their contact info?
I have not. I think generally these days in the electronic world we live in, I think privacy is of utmost concern for a lot of folks, and it's probably driven by that. It's just a privacy issue. So We get that. I mean, a hunter or our staff can easily go to the tax rolls and find out who that landowner is, but having it on the sign is helpful again to alert people who owns the land and who's posting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Ward.
It's not so much a question as merely a lot of trails are marked with yellow, and depending on which kind of trail, sometimes you have a blue color or another color. And I think if you start putting paint on trees, people need to know that these are specifically for borders, and not start following something and then they end up not knowing where they are. So and also paint on trees, the tree falls down and you don't see anything.
All right,
Happy to comment if you'd like, but
sure,
understood.
Mr. Hackley.
Sure, it's a valid concern. That's why we have boundary line maintenance, really, when trees age out and fall over, blow over. We all know trees aren't permanent, but when you have thousands of miles or just acres, many acres of boundary to maintain. In New England, particularly in the southern central part of New England, we have stone walls as well. Some landowners will paint a stone wall, put blaze marks on them with paint, but trees are the most common and easy way to mark a boundary. But you're right, trees fall over, so that's why we have surveyors to go out and reestablish those lines.
Mhm.
And as far as distinguishing from a trail to a boundary line, typically boundary lines are usually fairly straight, but not always. They have some crooks in them. But trails are obviously meandering, and there's a footpath that coincides with the painted trees, and so there's some distinguishing characteristics between the two. But I understand the concern.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hackley. Appreciate your testifying.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, committee.
Senator Gray, are you back?
He's muted.
Hear me? No, maybe he's not talking to us.
You're doing a great job. I've got two screens going and trying to
Okay,
what's going on. Thank you.
all right. Okay, Tricia, where do we go from here?
Just if there's anybody else who'd like to speak at this time, please raise your hand for Senate Bill 84. And I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, so with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 84. And are we on schedule or a little late? So should we open 85?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 9:20, so yes, we can. Mhm.
So I hereby open the hearing on Senate Bill 85 and the prime sponsor.
He is on, Karsten, do you see first name?
Yes, Senator
Okay.
Bradley here. I will let him in. Senator Bradley?
Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Bradley.
How's
Welcome.
everybody doing this morning?
Okay.
So pleased to be here and sponsoring Senate Bill 85. I want to thank all the bipartisan and, quite frankly, many co-sponsors of this bill. It would establish a broadband matching grant initiative fund that would be modeled somewhat after the state aid water grants that we have had for a number of years that have helped communities build their water infrastructure, in particular for drinking water. It's modeled at least somewhat after that. The pandemic clearly has shown that all of New Hampshire absolutely has to have access to broadband. There are many areas, not just in the rural areas of New Hampshire, but throughout New Hampshire, there are pockets of places that don't have good access to broadband. We have seen in the pandemic, it's just been accentuated how important broadband is for telecommuting, for telemedicine, for education purposes, and quite frankly, just for everybody in their everyday lives to be able to stay in touch with friends, family, and loved ones. So what this bill seeks to do is establish a matching grant initiative. It's a 50-50 split. I have not put in an appropriation. My hope is that we will pass this bill, your committee will pass this bill, the Senate will pass this bill, and then it will go to the Finance Committee to be considered as part of the budget for some amount of general fund funding. I also hope that through the efforts of Congress and the administration, that either there will be direct federal grants to state and municipalities, or specific funds allocated federally for broadband deployment throughout our nation, that the first part of the grant could be utilized for that 50%, some state funds and federal funds. The flip side to it is the ability for municipalities, counties, and telecommunication districts to be able to, working with providers, put up a 50% match also. This gives broad participation of not only state and federal dollars, but also local dollars and provider dollars to be able to deploy broadband. The program would be run through the Office of Strategic Initiatives. I believe that Jared Chacoin is poised to testify this morning about the grant and how it would work. It's somewhat, well, I shouldn't say similar, but obviously Governor Sununu used $50 million of CARES funding and would have been able to use the entire $50 million. I believe only 14 million ended up being allocated because of the very tight time frame of CARES spending that had to be completed by December 31st of 2020. So I think the need is clearly there. It would be implemented, as I said, by OSI at the 25.3 speed limits. Obviously, we want to see higher speeds, but these speeds are at least a threshold to begin with. There are a couple of questions that people have asked of me, so let me try to address them first. The counties are not specifically designated in the legislation. On page 19, page 2, line 19, any political subdivision or communications district. Remember that Senator Kahn's bill and Senator Deitch's bill from last year and mine, I think it was wrapped into House Bill 1111. I think Senator Susi will recall that, created communications districts. A political subdivision also includes counties. So counties are eligible for this type of funding. The second thing, and I have prepared an amendment, if you look at the top of page 2 of the bill, line 1, planning costs shall be ineligible. That was an oversight on my part, and I signed off on the bill because it was one of the last ones out of the chute, and I just signed off on it knowing that I wanted to have an amendment. Planning costs should be eligible for reimbursement. A lot of the towns or counties are in the process right now of trying to figure out where exactly they need to have broadband deployment. There is an expense to that, and I think it should be eligible. There's also probably going to be testimony from some of the providers with the potential of an amendment. I think much of that amendment makes sense, and you'll hear from some of the providers about that. The one issue that I think we need to make sure of is that if there are going to be direct grants to to providers, that political subdivisions have a very strong say in how those dollars are allocated. I think there could be merit to direct grants to, the matching federal, state, and then, provider to the providers, but I think we need to make sure that political subdivisions are part of that equation in terms of ensuring that there's access throughout a community per the wishes of the political subdivision. So I'm going to stop there and thank the committee very much for your attention, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? I have one, and I'm not, Senator Bradley, are you aware of Senator Khan's amendment to your bill? If this
Well, we
is,
spoke about it briefly. I don't know that I've seen it. When he spoke about it, he said something to the effect of a legislative oversight group to determine how the funds get allocated. So the conversation that I had with Senator Khan, I have to say I'd be opposed to something that would slow down the process. I think there has to be participation by political subdivisions the way I've outlined how this would work. There clearly is. Anything that slows down the deployment of broadband, which as I understood what he told me about his amendment would do that, I think would be harmful. The point is we need, I think the governor tried to do it this summer because of the tight timeframes of the CARES Act, that projects had to be completed by December 31st. We're only able to allocate about 30% of the available funds. That's too bad, and we should not put a stranglehold on slowing this down. This needs to happen, in my opinion, as quickly as possible.
thank you, Senator Bradley. Again, any questions from the committee?
I just want to make sure, Senator Birdsall, that the committee has amendment 0181.
I don't have it.
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
That's the amendment that allows that planning costs be eligible for reimbursement.
We do
What
have
was
that.
it? 0182?
0181.
Oh, 81. Okay, I'll find it, but.
This is Senator Gray. I am back. Both of the amendments 0181 and 0178 are on the committee's drive. So the committee members should all have access to that. Are there any other questions?
We'll send it again as well.
I believe that we're ready to go to the second sponsor then.
Oh, there's only one.
Oh, okay. This
Yeah.
was the standalone bill. Okay. Who else is on the list then?
So going down our sign up list, next we have Senator Gaida. Again, I don't see him on here. I believe he's in the other hearing. So next we can bring in Senator Khan. Senator Khan.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and others here. Good to see you. I want to indicate that I am in favor of Senate Bill 85. But I am also hopeful that Senator Bradley and I can work to make very certain that there is some legislative input into the award criteria for this program. I don't think it's going to take that long. And I know the cycle that the towns that are, for our legislative process, and secondly, for towns to prepare a project for warrant article consideration, which would first be in March of 22. So I think we've got time to do this right. And I favor SB 85 because it will put the state in a position to allocate funds to towns to match the cost of extending broadband to all households and properties across New Hampshire. The towns and households lacking the FCC minimum standards that have been in place, the same standards since 2014, are small. They are not a path to the future. If we only build at that level, it is not going to be worth the 20-year bond that it may take to pay those down. So we need to think a little bit bigger in this program. It should serve the under and unserved communities, as statute says. Just want to lay out some higher goals for the allocation of these dollars. The effort to allocate CARES relief funds this last year pointed out the importance of needing to engage the towns and their representatives in setting the award criteria. And let me illustrate why. I have in my district, the town of Nelson. It is a town of 700 people. An internet provider was awarded a CARES broadband grant that was to the provider. That was good news if you live on Granite Lake, where there were existing pole permits, but it was really bad news if you lived in the other 80% of the town. Complaints about the lack of broadband service were coming in about every week and to their senator. And now they've changed to why am I not, why don't I get it, to why I'm not included. I called the town select board and asked them why they weren't included. And they said, well, we were never consulted about the grant application. And I'm sure others may have similar experiences that they can share with you. This isn't just about Nelson. This is the kind of cherry picking that will make it more difficult for a small town to bond for the most rural and probably less affluent parts of their towns. There needs to be some type of legislative engagement in setting the award criteria for distribution from the broadband matching grant fund. Called this legislative committee, call it oversight, call it advisory, call it one time. I don't care really what it's called. I just believe that in its charge and in working with the Office of Strategic Initiatives, that group ought to assure that broadband is reaching the biggest, broadest geographic coverage for the state. It needs to assure that participation of towns and municipalities, that they're engaged in the application process. They need to encourage financial participation of providers and investors in the process. They should provide a broadband infrastructure that will support business and residential users over the entire life of the bond, not just initial service. They should enable hotspots from municipal properties that support local access for people who can't afford in-home services, and that is always going to be a problem. They need to be able to recommend mapping studies that enhance the state's competitive opportunities for funding. And I've had these conversations with FCC staff. Statewide mapping that's kept up to date is very important to them in being able to evaluate funding competitiveness. If there are additional statutory provisions, but I think we've done fairly well to date, then this advisory committee could be a vehicle for supporting the efforts of the Office of Strategic Initiatives. And then finally, to receive an annual report to see how we're doing on broadband infrastructure improvements across the state. I'm prepared to introduce the amendment that Senator Gray and Birdsall referred to. It is Amendment 0178 at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'll take care of that during the executive session. I don't know that that will be today, so.
Mr. Chairman, I do look forward to listening today to other comments. Be glad to get together with Mr. Senator Bradley and Mr. Chicoine to work out how this method of legislative input is best accommodated. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions of the committee, Mr. Chairman.
I would encourage you to get with the senator and try to come up with something. Probably 2 weeks would be a good time frame. Does the committee have questions of the senator? Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Khan. Everything you said was really helpful to help us understand where you see some needs in this program. And I agree with the chair. I think it'd be great for all of us if you and Senator Bradley were able to work something out. But I just want to ensure, basically what you're describing as a process is that we'd be able to form this broadband oversight committee. It could do its work and essentially make recommendations in time for the warrant articles to be drafted, for example, in the fall, just to ensure that we're reaching as many municipalities as possible.
Yes, the cycle generally is that the towns are engaged in planning. They've got to go through the bidding process that's carried in the next bill you're going to hear. That planning process usually runs through with the RFI and RFP process through December. It's a decision-making month for them in January as to how they go forward with a preferred vendor, and then by February 1st, they're presenting those in hearings to their towns. So it's definitely that window between when this could be signed and December, the end of December, would be a very welcome time to work on this and to be able to then communicate the award criteria guidance and process to competing towns.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much, Senator. I'd like to move down the list to Executive Counselor District 1, Joseph Kenny.
Mr. Kenny, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, Senators, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll have to say that I left the state Senate many years ago and times have really changed. I am in support of Senate Bill 85 along with my colleague Jeb Bradley, state senator from Wolfboro. I'm the District 1 Executive Counselor. I represent 108 towns and 4 cities in the Upper Connecticut Valley, the Lakes region, and North Country. And many of my rural areas are in need of high-speed internet. So, I support the idea of, establishing a broadband matching grant initiative and fund. Obviously, that would be overseen by the Office of Strategic Initiatives and a non-lapsing fund. The previous senator has made, some very good points with the CARES Act and the way that money rolled out. There was only so many communities that could benefit from that that funding. In my area, we had Clarksville, Colebrook, and Stewartstown rushing to the end of last year, trying to put their lines up through New Hampshire Electric Co-op. And myself and the governor and others were there witnessing linemen put up the wires. So it was a very hasty occasion. So obviously, this legislation and amendments and further dialogue and discussion are going to have to talk about timelines for approval, authority, for funding, and for execution. The matching initiative can easily be partnered up with the Northern Borders and Rural Development funding programs already in existence to further expand broadband, not to mention some other federal programs. As indicated by Senator Bradley, broadband is critical for our businesses, healthcare, education, and government communities. Without it, rural New Hampshire is left behind. Also, our influx of outsiders who continue to move here expect this service along with our travel and tourism community. It's a worthwhile investment, and with the passage of Senate Bill 85, I think New Hampshire will make a statement that it supports high-speed internet infrastructure in the service that it provides. And I just want to make note that there are a lot of other initiatives around my district, such as the Carroll County Broadband Coalition, the Grafton County Broadband Committee, which was put together by the 3 Grafton County commissioners that meet quite frequently on the topic. And there are others that are out there, but they're all resources that can be used to help facilitate broadband. And this legislation will be very beneficial to those groups. So with that, I'd open up for any questions that you might have.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Counselor.
Thank you.
I want to, Jared Ciccone, I want to give him the opportunity to either testify now or at the end. Jared, it's up to you which position you'd like to be in.
I'm happy to testify at the end. There seems to be a number of concerns about, not concerns, but questions about what may have happened last year with the emergency broadband funding program. So I'm happy to wait until the end so that I can answer any questions the committee might have.
All right, Jared, that's what we'll do. Kirsten?
So next on our list, we have Joan McIntyre. Ms. McIntyre should be able to unmute yourself.
Is that good? Great. Good morning. My name is Joni McIntyre. I'm a real estate agent at Coldwell Banker J. Hampy Associates here in Concord. I'm also president-elect at the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. I am here this morning representing 7,000 members of our association. Realtors' support of Senate Bill 85, establishing matching funds for local municipalities, will hopefully be an important step towards greater deployment of broadband in underserved areas of New Hampshire, while increasing data speeds and lowering broadband prices. Any realtor will tell you, for a number of years, one of the first questions any prospective buyer will inquire about is broadband speed. Access to fast, reliable service is no longer an added benefit to any home, but rather a necessity. Online schooling, telemedicine, and work from home requirements are now critical considerations in the home buyer process. It is not an exaggeration that affordable high-speed broadband will soon become as essential as water and electricity, and the absence of broadband makes a community a less attractive destination for new investment and job growth. In some cases, real estate transactions in New Hampshire have fallen apart when a buyer learns that the property's internet speeds are not adequate for their needs. More often, buyers will not even view a property with inadequate services. Our communities prosper when they gain access to high-speed internet. Property values increase, businesses grow, and job creations flourish. In fact, a U.S. Department of Commerce study concluded that high-speed internet access increases property values by 6%. Obviously, higher property values will likely lead to greater revenue for the town. The critical importance of internet speeds is not just relevant to our residential real estate markets. Commercial real estate is perhaps even more dependent on access. While the commercial market is still settling as a result of the pandemic, it is quite possible that office space needs may get smaller, and many businesses are considering moving from having a central business headquarters to several suburban satellite offices. New Hampshire is in a great position to benefit from this trend, not only if we're able to offer these businesses the highest speed internet access. Thank you, and we ask for your support of SB 85.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee members? Not seeing any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is?
Our next speaker will be Mara Weston. Ms. Weston, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Wonderful. Good morning, members of the committee. Mr. Chair, my name is Mara Weston. I'm here this morning on behalf of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association. We checked the box that we're testifying in opposition to Senate Bill 85, and I want to stress that that is as written. We look forward to working with the sponsors on an amendment. We have also submitted testimony, written testimony, so I will keep my comments brief. NECTA members include Atlantic Broadband, Charter, and Comcast, some of New Hampshire's leading broadband providers, with over 450,000 customers in more than 184 communities. We want to thank, first of all, Senator Bradley and Senators Khan for their willingness to work with us over the years and going forward on a potential amendment. We appreciate the goals, and we generally endorse public-private partnerships to solve the challenges of how best to bring broadband to the unserved areas of the state. Our members have partnered with a number of state programs to deploy broadband in unserved communities, and we stand willing and able to do so in New Hampshire. We do recommend that to create a successful program, certain principles are adhered to. And I'll give you some examples of those that we do hope to talk about and work through in the context of an amendment. We believe that providers, as well as municipalities and communications districts, should be eligible to apply directly to the state for funding through the program. We believe that 25.3 specifically should not be referenced in the bill. Rather, the definition of broadband should be tied to the federal definition. 25.3 is really a floor for eligibility. It's not a static number, it is evolving. And we believe that that should be recognized to give New Hampshire the best opportunity and most success with this program. We believe that guidance is necessary to ensure that the grant-making process is technology neutral, competitive, and based on objective criteria. Grants should only fund the capital costs of network construction. We also believe that the economics of grants should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, with the state contributing no more than 50% to leverage the investment of the providers and municipalities together. And also projects that have already been funded through other federal grant programs should not be eligible for further state matching funds, given limited resources and the importance of these investments. We look forward to working with the sponsors, as I said, on an efficient, expeditious, and successful program. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions from the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for your testimony. Our next speaker is?
Our next speaker will be Nick Coates for the town of Bristol.
You are.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity, Senator Gray and committee members. I'll keep my remarks brief since much of what I was planning on saying was covered by Senator Bradley. And basically what I would like to reiterate is two things. One is that we would like to ensure that the counties are considered eligible entities, and I heard that spoken to earlier. As well as being the town administrator for the town of Bristol, I'm also the chair of the Grafton County Broadband Committee. We are working full steam ahead to deploy a system. The other thing that I would like to reiterate is that similar to what we just heard, the 25.3 standard ought to be the bare minimum. And I'll speak more to this in the next hearing. I would also like to state that we do believe that planning funds should be eligible for this grant program. Many municipalities and counties are just getting started, as you heard earlier from Senator Khan, and some seed funding to provide an opportunity to get started is going to be critical. What I've learned in Bristol is that it took us 3+ years to get going. And that was when we were dedicating our time and effort at almost a full-time rate. To be able to provide funds for a community to start planning is a really important thing. It allowed us to apply for and receive CARES Act funding. I believe we were the only municipality in the state that directly received funding for funds, and we completed our project on time and under budget. And that was because we did a lot of planning ahead of time. The other thing I'd like to just state, and I should reiterate that this testimony is in written form. I've submitted this in written form to the committee as well, so you should have it. I would ask that the committee consider, or either now or during the time when criteria is developed by OSI, if this were to move forward, that there be an emphasis on larger scale type projects to build out backbones, and particularly in the North Country, we see really a lack of infrastructure in the North Country, which is really hampering our education systems, our employment systems. The only way to really make the ROI make sense is on a larger scale type project, so backbone type projects. This is what the Grafton County Committee is working on right now. In a nutshell, backbone projects are essentially spine networks, right? So that municipalities and communication districts can tap into those and branch out into their communities. That is what makes the ROI work on a municipal, county, and communication district level, and most importantly at a private level. Why we don't see investment in the North Country is because it is too expensive. And so to have the ability to have a backbone network is going to be key across those counties in order to make that ROI more attractive for private investment. And that's ultimately what we're looking at. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight very quickly is that I applaud you for putting this together. This is right time, right place. I think the CARES Act did wonders for the state, for those who were able to access the dollars. I understand that a lot of towns and counties were not able to access it. That reiterates my point earlier about planning dollars. There are other funding dollars that are available, and the state could get a strong return on investment through using these funds to help municipalities and counties and communication districts. So I listed out some funding opportunities that will also become available: Northern Borders Regional Commission, Economic Development Administration, hopefully CARES Act Part 2, and federal stimulus dollars. We know that at the federal stimulus level, that it's likely that dollars are going to be looking at multi-jurisdictional, sort of across state lines. So again, why I wanted to emphasize larger scale backbone type projects ought to be a focus of this. So I really truly appreciate the senators for putting this forward. I appreciate the committee spending the time to think about this. And I would just ask or offer one last thing. Having been the only municipality in the state of New Hampshire who has built a broadband network, a municipally owned broadband network, I would be happy to offer any expertise and probably most importantly, where I probably hit my head against the wall 100 times. Lessons learned to the committee, as well as OSI and Senator Bradley as this legislation moves forward. Nobody wants to hit their head against the wall as much as I did, so I'd be happy to help people not do that. Thank you for your time.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. And our next speaker is.
Our next speaker will be Carol Monroe. Ms. Monroe, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I'm Carol Monroe. I'm the chair of the board for ValleyNet, which services the upper valley of New Hampshire as well as in Vermont. We have done a number of feasibility and business plans for both New Hampshire and Vermont in terms of broadband access. We have done work in the upper valley, as I said, North Country, for North Country Council and in Carroll County, and we continue to do that type of work for New Hampshire. I live in Dublin. I'm on the Dublin Broadband Committee and was probably instrumental in getting Dublin on the list to get fiber to the home this year with our partnership with CCI. I have a few comments and I submitted some written comments, so I'll just highlight the areas that I'm most concerned about or that I think could use some strengthening. Once again, we do want to make sure that the minimum is the FCC definition of broadband as it changes over time. So not just 25.3, but if it were to change to 100, that would become the minimum. And I think that's the way that should be worded within the bill. But as we all know, 25.3 is not enough. Over the past year, it's become evident, particularly for those homes that have multiple children and both parents working from home, that 25.3 doesn't cut it. I mean, it's just far, when you have everyone trying to do that work simultaneously over the same connection, it's just not enough broadband. So I encourage you to look at maybe prioritizing some requests for these grants to those that will be willing to offer a much more powerful broadband solution, particularly 100 meg symmetrical or even up to a gigabit. In the recent rural digital auction by the FCC, it became clear that most of those participating in the auction were participating at the gigabit tier. So it's perfectly normal for that to happen in today's world. Excuse me. So, so I think those types of grants should be prioritized over something that might not be universal or might not be sustainable over time to grow to the needs of the community. So I'm sorry. The second is I agree with what others have said. I think that planning dollars need to be considered, particularly feasibility studies, but also business plans. A feasibility study is only as good as the business plan that it can be developed from that study. And they should be included in the CARES Act funding. There were communities, particularly here in Southwest New Hampshire, that were prevented from participating because we had signed an agreement already. We had to have signed an agreement in order to get general obligation bonds for this public-private partnership in order to get the fiber project done. And as a result of just signing the agreement, no construction had even started. We were excluded from all the CARES Act funding. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen going forward, and that those communities or districts who have spent money or will be spending money on items such as pole collection, feasibility and planning, as well as high-level design work and network design work are not excluded, because it says that once you've started construction, those no longer eligible. So I want to make sure that those communities are still eligible for moving forward with that funding. And the last thing I'd like to encourage is that someone mentioned an advisory committee. I think that's a fine idea. I think that broadband is not an easy topic to fully understand, particularly through all its variations, whether it be cable, wireless, or fiber, that you include some subject matter expertise for this committee so that they are well informed over what's happening today and what the future looks like in terms of broadband as they make the decisions going forward. Not all broadband provides universal service. Not all broadband is symmetrical, and not all broadband is consistently reliable. So it's important that you have access to those subject matter experts to discuss that with. Those are my comments for this bill at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Next, we have Teresa Rosenberger. Ms. Rosenberger, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Senators. Teresa Rosenberger. I am representing the New Hampshire Telephone Association. I will not take up your time going through all of what Mrs. Weston said from testifying for NECTA. We would request you give us a little bit of time so that the providers can work together to come up with an amendment. We have many of the same concerns Mrs. Weston outlined for NECTA. The New Hampshire Telephone Association is made up of all the landline providers, and that's Consolidated, TDS, Granite State Telephone, Dunbarton Telephone, and Bretton Woods. I will say some of our members very successfully used and completed the broadband projects through the CARES Act. There were others of our members who could not use the funding, as I think Senator Bradley so accurately said, due to the timing. But that process did work. And so I think when we work with the others in a coalition, we like to make sure the aspects of that program that really worked well will continue to work well going forward. Our biggest goal, I think, is exactly yours, which is expediency, to have a process that gets broadband deployed throughout the state, particularly the rural areas, as quickly and efficiently and as possible. So thank you. We testified as neutral and would love to come back with you with the other providers with an amendment. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from the committee? If you were paying attention to the earlier testimony, I did tell Senator Khan that he has about 2 weeks to work with Senator Bradley. That certainly would be your time limit also. Kirsten?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Senator. I did hear that, and I hope that applied to us too. So thank you. We will have something back to you well before 2 weeks.
I think you need to go through Senator Khan and Senator Bradley.
We certainly will do that. Thank you.
Next speaker is.
All right, at this time, everybody who has signed up to speak has spoken. So if you'd like to speak and you haven't spoken yet, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will circle back to Jared Ciccone. I see Carol Miller has her hand raised and Matthew Plachey. Would you like me to bring each of them in one at a time? All right, we're starting with Carol Miller. Ms. Miller, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning, Chairman Senator Gray and committee members. I had signed up in support of this bill, not wishing to speak, and then had afterthoughts. So only because there were things in the bill that kind of struck me as needed clarification. My name is Carol Miller. I'm currently serving as Director of Broadband Initiatives for the National Collaborative for Digital Equity, founded and based in New Hampshire. I'm newly retired on December 31st from state government as a Director of Broadband Technology in the Department of Business and Economic Affairs, and formerly DRED in the Division of Economic Development, combined with over 11 years in state service. Previously spent 19 years as Vice President of North Country Internet Access based in Berlin, New Hampshire. Through 2011. So I have a long career in communications, and I've spent most of it helping people connect and providing advocacy for those people who could not connect. And gaps exist in every county. You know, people like to say the North Country. I'm speaking to you now from Gorham, New Hampshire, so I'm a Coos County resident, and you can add Coos County initiative to the list of broadband initiatives across the state. With this bill, we're just a little bit shy, really. We have an opportunity before us here to create an Office of Broadband to fully embrace the initiatives across the state. I think this bill is a little shy of doing that. We need to create the office, create the fund, and appropriate the money. And I say that because I never, through my 11 years, had a fund to give out. So all I could give was advice. And we know that talk is cheap often. But I've worked with many of these people that have testified before me today. There are advantages to having an office with regards to federal funding. Competitive grants score higher points for having that office. And our federal delegation would be better able to support broadband with someone in charge at the state level who can work with them to support the measures that best fit the communication landscape of our state. Our state is a high-tech state. We're considered really fairly well connected, yet we have all these gaps. And these gaps have come to the surface for the many reasons that other folks testified today. So I ask you to create that office. I agree with Miss Weston on many of her ideas. I agree with Carol Monroe on her ideas. I think planning costs should be allowed. There should be an advisory board, and it should be a board that does not slow down the deployment of broadband. I worked with an advisory board as director of broadband technology under DRED until it was repealed. And that board was made up of providers, municipalities, regional planning commissions, all of the characters that should be involved with regards to working together for the state of New Hampshire. We should focus our grant monies on higher speeds. I mean, I'm so tired of the 25 megabit by 3 megabit conversation. It doesn't work anymore. And so relegating that to the FCC definition is fine, it scales, but we should set our sights much higher. We should set our sights to high speed and or fiber to the premise to provide that higher capacity and reliable connections for our future, for the 50 years to come. Why set the bar so low? So with that, I will end my testimony, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak on a few notes. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Matthew Plachey. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm Matthew Platch. I'm a Carroll County Commissioner, and I'm Vice Chair of the Carroll County Broadband Committee. I want to echo the comments of those in support of this bill. This is much needed. This program will do a lot to deploy broadband, help get broadband deployed in the rural areas of our state. Carroll County has too many gaps, far too many gaps in broadband service. I also want to echo the comments of those who are indicating that the 25.3 standard is too slow. And it is, it's archaic at this point. What we're finding is you cannot have a proper Zoom conference with 25.3. You need faster upload speeds. 25.3 is great for watching Netflix, for watching entertainment, watching movies. It just doesn't work for doing business at home, for doing education at home, for interacting with governments. You can't even, without a proper Zoom conference, you can't function in today's society. It will do a lot if we could speed that up to say 100 by 100, symmetrical. Carroll County Broadband recently submitted comments to the FCC. The FCC is looking at raising that benchmark, and we urged the FCC to do that. But I would recommend not tying this grant program to the 25.3 minimum, but finding a way to encourage faster speeds. Give preference to applicants that are proposing 100 by 100 or even gigabit symmetrical service. So thank you for allowing me to comment. Thank you for doing this. And I urge you to move forward with this legislation.
Do I have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And I guess we're ready to go back to Jared.
Yes, is there anybody else like to speak? And I'm not seeing any hands, so I will bring Jared Chacon back. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself, Mr. Choi.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to testify this morning. I'll be brief. For the record, my name is Jared Chacon, and I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Strategic Initiatives. By way of background, OSI administered the Connecting New Hampshire Broadband Expansion Program last year, which was created to address the increased need for internet connectivity due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This program was authorized by Governor Chris Sununu and was funded through the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund. The program spent roughly $13.9 million, and we connected 4,500 previously unserved properties in 19 communities. We definitely learned a lot, a tremendous amount about the challenges facing our rural communities as it relates to access to high-speed internet. And you know, we signed up in support today of this bill. You know, I believe it does address the concerns that have been mentioned, that communities be involved in the planning of these projects and therefore benefiting, or I should say, helping achieve good outcomes. I personally, you know, heard those concerns during our process last year with this grant program. You know, we were under a very tight time frame. You know, the CARES Act funding had to be spent by the end of December. So we understood that there were a number of communities that could not apply for these grant funds. So I heard those frustrations, had a number of conversations with town officials throughout the state on this. But I really do believe that this bill is a step in the right direction. And having heard the testimony today and you know, the input that others have provided, we are ready and willing to work with Senator Bradley and the co-sponsors and look forward to this bill becoming law. I would also just note that for those communities that are concerned about the involvement at the local level, if this bill becomes law, the Division of Planning here at the Office of Strategic Initiatives would administer the grant program. I'm sure some of you have interacted with our planning team before. You know, they're in regular communication with the regional planning commissions, town planners, and town administrators. So our office is very much connected to our municipalities. So I just wanted to add that. And I'd be happy at this time to take any questions about the New Hampshire Emergency Broadband Expansion Program that we administered last year, or any other questions there might be generally.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. And unless somebody has raised their hand, and I guess not, I'll close this public hearing. Thank you. We'll give everybody a minute or two to reset your screens. Guess it looks like I'm the slow one here, huh? Right.
You got two computers going, so we'll give you some help.
Right.
Well, all right. Prime sponsor for this bill, I believe, is Senator Khan.
Yes.
Senator, are you there? Yes.
Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman and members of the ELMA committee. I am Jay Kahn. I am the senator in District 10, which is 15 towns in Cheshire County. I am the presenter of Senate Bill 88, an omnibus bill that includes 3 different parts. I'm the prime sponsor of Part 1. Mr. Chairman, as I understand the process, you'll recognize the prime sponsor of each of the sections of the bill. As I am the prime sponsor of Part 1, I will introduce that one. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to come back and speak briefly to Part 3 of the motion at the appropriate time.
That's fine.
Relative to Part 1, this amends RSA 53G, which was enacted July 20 of 2020 during our past legislative season. The goal of that was to create a communications district and the planning committee to attract broadband providers for underserved areas, serving multiple towns under the same project as sort of like bulk purchasing. Upon looking to utilize the communications district planning process described in section 2.1 of the statutes, towns have observed a problem which SB 88 Part 1 looks to fix. According to the current wording, it would take a vote in year 1 at multiple town meetings before the towns could name people to a communications district planning committee, so that in year 2, the town could consider the proposal from the planning committee. Towns can actually do this quicker by themselves without that 2-step process. So to place the communications district on the same plane and the same process as a single town's planning process, Part 1 removes the language which the authors feel on hindsight was the wrong language. They would have preferred to have deleted it, but it is there. And they have asked if I could introduce this. So it is on page 1 and on line 15 to just remove a few words. And what the net effect of this is, it allows the municipalities to name people to a planning committee. And then that planning committee will follow the same process for bonding as any town. They'll prepare their proposal. That bond would go to hearings, and in each of the towns, subject to warrant articles being produced and approval by each town in its appropriate town warrant article approval process, and they would follow that. So I hope that this minor change is one that the committee can embrace and endorse, and I'm glad to answer any questions that folks might have.
Does the committee have any questions of Senator Khan? Seeing none. The Senator Bradley, is he on the line?
Yes, I will bring in Senator Bradley.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jeb Bradley, Senate District 3, and the prime sponsor of Part 2 of Senate Bill 88. What Part 2 of Senate Bill 88 would do is have the Public Utilities Commission implement the provisions of what's known as One Touch Make Ready, which is a Federal Communications Commission order that was passed in 2018. One Touch Make Ready is designed to ease and simplify the deployment of wires on poles by better sequencing and avoidance of delay by allowing single construction crews to be able to facilitate the poles on wires. There is estimated to be obviously a significant cost reduction. In fact, the FCC has estimated that it could be as high as $1 billion across the country. That's why I've introduced part two, and it was at the behest of Carroll County Broadband. Commissioner Platch testified on my earlier bill, and I believe that he or others from Carroll County Broadband will testify. Thank you.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Senator Ward. Senator Ward, you need to unmute.
There we go.
There, sounds good.
Okay. I'm Senator Ward from District 8, and I'm here to introduce part 3 of the Senate Bill 88. This is at a request from one of their constituents, and it has to do with the Chapter 33 of the Municipal Finance Act, Section 33:3-G. It was requested, though, just a very few minor changes. Apparently, given 2 months to respond to the request is taking too long, and they wanted it down to 1 month. And also with clarification, not just all providers, but all primary providers. So the 1 month, I discussed that, and we really would prefer to have it as 30 days, because 1 month can go between 28 and 31 days to make this much more specific. And the primary providers was the choice of the constituent and for their needs. And I have since heard that let's see here, there's on line 20, that information identifying locations is not accurate, is not specific enough to change that to addresses, so that we don't have to try to figure out where the location is, but actually have an actual address. And that's about it. Those are 3 very small changes to part 3 of the SB 3888.
Okay, do the committee members have any questions of Senator Ward? Seeing none, looking at the list of people who have signed up, I don't see any other senators that have signed up to speak. Unless you do, we'll recognize Senator Khan, who wanted to come back and speak to Section 3. Senator
Thank you,
Khan?
Madam. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to support the part 3 and part 2. I think these are all improvements, but in part 3, Senator Ward had addressed 2 of the changes that I would have made as well. And if she is going to handle the committee amendments to make those changes, I fully support that the page 2, line 19, 1 month be 30 days, and in line 20 that locations be replaced with addresses. And just to reiterate, maybe clarify that one point, some towns in receiving locations have received maps that are on a scale that make the actual addresses being served by those current providers illegible. And what towns are asking for is just tell us the addresses that you believe are currently served, so that we have a finite set of properties that we know we can put out for service as unserved. So If you make that change on line 20, replacing locations with addresses, I'm certain that through the billing address process or the service, I'm just certain providers would be able to do that within the 1 month RFI window or 30-day RFI window. And I'll leave it to providers to talk about the word primary. I know that there have been some smaller providers who've been very hard to contact because ownership may have moved over the time that they initially installed. I can tell you some towns that have had that headache. But I think the attempt to try to contact all providers in a territory has in the past been a provider concern, but they can address that issue better than I can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have. And Senator Ward will give me guidance as to how she wishes to proceed with those couple of changes in part 3.
You're muted. Senator Gray, you're muted.
I must have coughed or something in between. Just as in the past bill where Senator Bradley needs to put together that consolidated amendment, I charge you with the same duties because there may be some suggestions coming from the rest of, and we'll give you about the 2 weeks that we did on the other to come up with that. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. And our next speaker is.
Next speaker we'll bring in is William Darcy. Mr. Darcy? Mr. Darcy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
All right, apparently Mr. Darcy is having, oh, there he is.
Yeah, am I here?
Yes.
Yeah, I submitted testimony. I didn't think I'd be able to speak because I have auditors in town hall today. But I do have a.
We don't encourage you to repeat your testimony, only to summarize it.
I will only summarize it. The long and the short is the part 2 of the bill is extremely important to Benton, and I think all the towns that have substandard service. We want it to be delivered quickly, and we want it to be delivered cost effectively. One touch is a means used in other states and actually was used by agreement in the CARES rollout that NHC used for the projects that Jared mentioned earlier. So we think it is a system that works, it's cost effective, it makes logical sense, saving money and getting service to our municipalities and in-need residents as quickly as possible is only a good thing. So I urge you to support SB 88 and particularly part 2. Thank you.
Does the committee have any questions of Mr. Darcy? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Darcy. And our next speaker is?
Will be Ellen. Ms. Scarponi, you'll be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning, Chairman Gray and committee members. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you. My name is Ellen Scarponi and I represent Consolidated Communications. I've been in front of many of you a number of times, and I have submitted written testimony, so I won't go into exactly who we are and what we do. The reason I wanted to testify was just to say that we support Senate Bill 88 with the changes that Senator Khan and Senator Gray and Senator Bradley have talked about. We have worked with a number of towns since the institution of municipal broadband bonding, about 50 of them. So these are the things that the amendment topics. These are the things that we have also heard from the towns that we have worked with, both those that we have won the bids for and those that we did not. The only other thing that I would like you to ask you to consider when making these changes in an amendment is we support the one-touch make ready in part 2, but we would propose and recommend that you delete the section in 374-34A Roman 5 that starts with, in entering into poll attachment agreements, all parties shall abide by the timelines established by the commission in rules. Those timelines are in rules, and it could have unintended consequences because providers sometimes in the poll attachment agreements actually negotiate times that are shorter than the ones that are in the PUC timeframes. And having the mandate would actually require the provider to revert to the longer timeframes. So with one touch make ready, that will shorten the timeframes considerably. We don't feel that that section is necessary, and it could be a conflict for the providers. I won't repeat anything else, but I will take any questions that you might have.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Oh,
Now,
you're muted, Kristen.
it happens to the best of, you know.
Sorry about that. Yeah, our next speaker is Mara Weston. Ms. Weston?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mara Weston, and I'm here this morning to testify on behalf of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association. I'm testifying on Senate Bill 88, and we signed in opposition, and I'll stress once again, in opposition as written. And we look forward to working with the sponsors on some proposed changes in the format of an amendment. I'm going to direct my comments this morning to sections 2 and 3 of the bill. Part 2 of the bill, directing the PUC to adopt one touch make ready. It's our position that rather than a mandate in statute, it would be more appropriate to direct the Public Utilities Commission to consider adopting this provision as opposed to a straight mandate. And we base that conclusion on a couple of different facts. First, the PUC adopted its own make ready and poll attachment rules at the end of 2018. Those rules and the FCC's one touch make ready rules are very similar, and both contain many provisions intended to safely accelerate and ease network deployment. Those are objectives that our members certainly endorse. Also, over a decade ago, the legislature determined that New Hampshire should take regulatory authority over poll attachment rates, terms, and conditions. One of the advantages the proponents at that time cited was the PUC's ability to tailor its rules to the state's unique circumstances and adjudicate disputes more quickly. And we know that our Public Utilities Commission has shown that it has substantial expertise in identifying the interests of poll owners, attaching entities, which include our members, municipalities, and consumers. So therefore, we would suggest replacing shall in line 27 with may. And I'm just going to point out as well, there is a drafting error in a citation. The proper citation for the FCC's one touch make ready order is 47 CFR 1.1411J. I just wanted to mention that briefly. Now I'll speak to part 3 of the bill. It seems as though the sponsor's goal in part 3 may be to simplify processes for issuing RFIs and RFPs under the municipal finance statutes. However, we don't necessarily believe that the language as drafted achieves that goal. The bill seeks to shorten the time providers have to respond to an RFI and limits the universe of providers who must be issued an RFI. RFIs are actually required so that communities can determine, for the purposes of issuing the RFP, what locations in town are unserved. So NECTA opposes adding the word primary in line 18 of page 2. The word primary is ambiguous, and we believe it's contrary to the intent, the legislative intent, that public money is not used to duplicate existing private investment. We understand the intent of the provision and suggest that instead, the legislature amend the law to require towns to issue their RFIs to all providers on an interested providers list that, for example, could be maintained by the Bureau of Economic Affairs or other state agency. For example, it would be incumbent upon the providers to submit to that entity that they are an interested provider in communities A through Z, and to provide the appropriate point of contact. What we have learned is that in some cases, providers may not have even been aware of an RFI, and that the point of contact perhaps wasn't the right point of contact. And so we think that this is an alternative approach to really facilitate the process, the RFI process for both municipalities and providers, making sure that any entity that's interested can respond to that RFI. Part 3 also shortens the time period that the providers have to respond from 2 months to 1 month. Providers may miss that opportunity to respond for some reasons that may be beyond their control. We think that that window should remain 2 months. Information requested by towns can be inconsistent, which creates challenges for providers to respond in a timely way. It's that inconsistency that sometimes causes delay for providers in responding. So the shorter time frame really isn't as reasonable to have the fullest and most robust participation. NECTA members frequently receive requests for information related to the RFI process, which the member either does not have, cannot easily produce, or cannot provide in the format demanded by the town. And really no good faith effort, we think, should be rejected. So we propose that a shorter time frame could be acceptable if an amendment were added to clarify what constitutes an acceptable response to an RFI. The clarity and consistency of that would benefit the towns and the providers and would help to avoid needless disagreement and inefficiencies in the process. So we respectfully request an opportunity to work with the stakeholders and the sponsors to make some improvements to the bill with the shared goal of more efficient and robust processes. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have them.
As I stated earlier, do not intend to take this up for at least 2 weeks.
Thank you. We will work with the sponsors.
Do the committee members have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And our next speaker would be?
Our next speaker is Nick Coates.
Good morning again. Thank you, everyone. My name is Nick Coates. I'm the town administrator for the town of Bristol. I'm also the chair of the Grafton County Broadband Committee. I have 2 requests. I would like to first say that I do appreciate the committee taking this bill up, and I do support Section 1 and Section 2. In particular, Section 2 is critical for implementation of projects. I did want to speak to 2 amendment requests that I have submitted to Senator Bradley, and would be happy to speak to the other senators as well. This is all in written testimony, so I will just summarize. Just one comment I would like to make that was related to something that was said earlier regarding the One-Touch Make-Ready. I think one of the things that's key regarding the One-Touch Make-Ready that we found as we investigated the process in our broadband project work in Bristol was that there were no penalties for missing deadlines when the deadlines were missed on response times and ride out times. So I am a bit hesitant to hear or to say that language should be changed to may versus shall. I think that it's important whenever possible to hold everyone accountable to do what they're supposed to do. So that's the only comment I would like to make relating to that one touch make ready, other than that I do support it. This is consistent with our project and the work that we did in Bristol. We were able to work with New Hampshire Electric Co-op, CCI as well, on pole attachment processes in a streamlined way. It allowed us to be able to deploy our project on a very tight timeline. So this is, I think, a key piece of it as federal funding becomes available with tight deadlines. I would like to just speak briefly, if I could, to some amendment requests that I've made. One is something that you heard me speak about earlier in SB 85, is that I would like for the committee to consider adding counties. So in 33.3G right now, it lists municipalities and communication districts. So we just ask that the word county and counties be added to that, to allow counties to be able to do that, as the Grafton County Broadband Committee is looking very closely at opportunities for developing backbone or partnering with organizations who are interested in providing service. I would like to be able to bring funding to the table to make that ROI more attractive. So if counties could be added into the 33.3G, and that is consistent with the rest of the RSA 33, counties are mentioned in other aspects of 33.3. So that's one request. The other request, which I provided in markup to the committee in my written testimony, was around the RFI process. I'm recommending, and the committee is asking, that the process be streamlined in a way that is essentially a free market approach. There's a lot of talk about an RFI versus an RFP and which amount of time should be allowed. My opinion, the committee's opinion, is that let the free market dictate the situation, similar to the way municipalities deploy wastewater and water projects. When they bond them, the municipalities go out to RFP. So they bond projects and they go out to RFP. There are no hoops like RFIs, and there are no waiting periods, and there are no hoops to jump through. I would recommend that the committee streamline the language in section 33.3G Roman 3. And again, this is in my written testimony. It also, the other portion of this that I believe the benefit of the strike throughs that I've offered are that it walks away from this 25.3 standard that was talked about earlier, that's been talked about in both Senate Bill 85 and 88. This allows for municipalities, counties, and communication districts to go out and bond and do projects with private partners at the speeds that are not just for now, but for the future. You heard earlier about 100 by 100 symmetrical to 1 gig by 1 gig. What the language does currently in Roman 3 is it basically ties this to our federal standard. I think I heard in SB 85 there was a discussion about technology being the importance of being technology neutral. I would say the same thing. Let the market decide what is the best speed for, and let the municipality go out and get the best service possible. Reduce the hoops and streamline the process is the request. So again, I've provided that in written testimony. I'd be happy to work with sponsors and the committee to walk through that process if requested. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Questions from committee members? Thank you. Our next speaker would be?
Our next speaker is Carol Monroe. Ms. Monroe, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Good morning to the chair and the senators on this committee. I have submitted written testimony, and I just want to summarize for you the points of interest here. On part 1, relative to the creation of communication districts, the amendment to RSA 53G2 is fairly straightforward. Rather than the legislative body, which in small towns means town meeting, vote to create a committee to look at the potential of participating in a communication district, it allows the governing bodies, meaning the select board, to create a special unpaid committee to be known as a communication district planning committee. And that in itself will reduce the time it takes to bring forth and move forward with these committees. The language makes it easier to create the planning committee without having to wait for a town meeting, reducing that time frame. And the planning committee will then continue to report their findings to the town and to the legislative body, which would be town meeting at the following year. The way it's currently worded, it takes 2 years to get to the point of creating a communication district instead of possibly 1 or less. And so they can do the work. And in the case of Carroll County, they have done a significant amount of work already, but this March, they'll be going to the towns to request the formation of a committee, which in fact has already been established to some extent. And they won't be able to go forward with a communication district until next March. And so it really clarifies that and shortens the time frame. And I encourage you to move forward with that section. Part 2, One Touch Make Ready. When an additional provider needs to access the utility poles in the public right-of-way, the pole owners and all other facility owners on those poles need to move their facilities on the pole to make room for the additional provider. In many cases, it makes sense to have one qualified outside plant technician move all the facilities on the pole, particularly in the communication space, rather than have each utility schedule and send their own outside plant personnel in a bucket truck to move the facility on the pole, and then the next pole facilities have to do the same, which takes time and energy and more cost. For those states following the FCC pole attachment process, One Touch Make Ready has been incorporated in that process since 2018. It has been included in the Make Ready process in the state of Vermont. And in many cases, the current utility already outsources that pole Make Ready work to a qualified outside plant contractor. So in most cases, in many cases, it isn't even the company's own outside plant doing this work. They've outsourced it already to a qualified outside plant contractor. This change relative to public utility regulation of utility pole attachments will encourage multiple internet service providers to expand their networks to unserved areas, and it will reduce the time and the cost necessary for Make Ready work. I encourage you to move in that direction of One Touch Make Ready, particularly in the communication space on the utility pole. The next section in part 2 is really a clarification in the PUC chapter 1300 utility pole attachments. It does include the requirement to negotiate an agreement with pole utility owners. This negotiation is often one-sided, as the pole owning utility is often a large multi-state entity negotiating with a much smaller internet service provider. My experience has been that the pole owner, specifically if an existing telephone utility, has attempted to reduce the requirements relative to establishing a pole attachment agreement and the timing of the Make Ready work required. Although the existing rules could benefit from One Touch Make Ready modifications, the Make Ready timing requirements are clear. If the state wanted to encourage broadband providers to build networks in our most rural areas, the timing of pole Make Ready work is critical to providing services as quickly as possible. This amendment will assure that the ISPs, that a negotiation is fair and balanced, and the PUC administrative rules with regards to pole Make Ready work will be followed. And just because the rules indicate a certain timeline, those are the maximum timelines. Just any utility who wants to beat those times is certainly capable of doing that, and it would be welcome. But to extend those times without penalties is what we need to avoid. In section 3, relative to the issuance of bonds for financing broadband infrastructure, we're all interested in expanding broadband to those premises most in need of services. And the modifications to RSA 33(3)(g)(3) clarifies that the RFI, request for information requirement, for addresses in a town that are currently served at what we consider the FCC definition at this point in time, and upload to the primary providers only. So it's important in this aspect of things to get those addresses where we can match up those addresses to a 911 address list of all premises in town to determine who is served and who is unserved. Because the next step in the process in moving forward with the public-private partnership is to put out an RFP for the unserved areas in town. I've seen multiple types of responses to this request, particularly from the cable companies. And some of them include a hand-drawn map, you know, with a highlighted area. It has nothing to do with premises, and the town would have to, there's just no way to go back and match that to a map or a 911 address or a GIS location. It's just insufficient to be able to do the work that needs to proceed from there. I'm sure that the cable companies have a list of those that they serve within a given town, and can provide that. And I think they can do that within 30 days. This is not rocket science. And so all of these changes to RSA 33.3 clarify that. And hopefully we can get to the point of having responsible and responses in a timely fashion from the providers who are providing service in a given town. I must say that the telecommunication providers, in particular CCI, has been very helpful. They have provided the information within 30 days for each town that's requested it by address, and it's very clear which premises are served at that FCC definition of broadband and which ones are not. So I'm certain that the cable industry can do the same. And
right,
so with that, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. And from my look at the list, we're at the end, but have anybody else raised their hand or signed up since the beginning?
Yes, we do have a few more names on the list. I think they signed up later. Next, we have Mark Dean. Mr. Dean, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. My name is Mark Dean. I'm a lawyer here in Concord, New Hampshire, and I represent New Hampshire Electric Co-op as its general counsel. And I'm usually appearing before the Senate Energy Committee, but I think it all applies today. So the co-op has a slightly different background and maybe a slightly different take on Section 2, which is what we're testifying about. And to begin with, we do support Part 2 of the bill. And by way of background, you may know the co-op serves about 85,000 members in about 118 towns in New Hampshire, providing electric service. And the co-op owns roughly 100,000 utility poles in the state of New Hampshire that it has electric service provided over. In the last year, the co-op, much motivated by petitions from its membership, has decided to attempt to bring high-speed internet service to its members and to some non-members in the state of New Hampshire. And part of that involved participating in 2 CARES programs this year that brought service to unserved co-op members in Colebrook, Leominster, Clarksville, and Stewarttown. And the standard that the co-op is building to is a 1 gig symmetrical. So in
Mr.
more
Dean,
layman's,
Mr.
yes,
Dean, this is the chair.
yes,
We need to get to the content of the bill.
okay. I hope I am. I'm just trying to bring to you that the co-op was able to build its CARES projects because it reached an agreement with CCI, and it was itself a pole owner and was able to use one-touch make-ready work for both of those projects in their entirety. And so the co-op is very supportive of one touch as a method for make-ready work. It sounds like there are a couple of amendments potentially floating out there. We'll work with Senator Bradley to give whatever input he needs on that. And I guess the only other item I would point to is that as the amendment is currently structured, or the bill is currently structured, there would be a requirement that the PUC conduct rulemaking proceedings that would kick in only obviously after the bill not only was passed and enacted, but 60 days later. And those rulemaking proceedings can take some good period of time. And we're hoping to work with Senator Bradley and maybe some of the other proponents of the bill to see if there's a way that One Touch, either by agreement or by statute, can become sort of the process that it's uniformly adopted, maybe faster than that regulatory process would usually provide for. And that concludes my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, our next speaker is.
Our next speaker is Matthew Plotch. Mr. Plotch, you should be able to speak.
Yes, thank you. Again, I am Carroll County Commissioner, and I am the Vice Chair of the Carroll County Broadband Committee. And we worked with, the committee worked with Senator Bradley in preparing Part 2 of this bill. We strongly support it. And I want to make 2 points about One Touch Make Ready. The first is that when the FCC adopted this, they estimated that billions of dollars would be saved in deployment costs, and this would help speed deployment to millions of citizens in rural areas. And it's been successful in doing that in other states. I don't know how that will translate in New Hampshire, but it's certain that it's going to lower the deployment cost and help speed deployment to high cost areas. And this is the rural areas of the state that we need better internet access so desperately. The one point about One Touch Make Ready that Carol Monroe brought out, but I want to emphasize this. It only applies to simple attachments in the communications space. It does not apply to the more complex attachments or moving electrical wires on the poles. So it will help a lot, but it does not apply in every case, which is how it should be. I mean, those are the more dangerous attachments, and so the FCC was carefully crafted this rule. With regard to the timelines and the second part of Part 2, I guess we'd call it, I've been an attorney for 3.5 decades, and I just want to say that when there's a deadline for doing something, it's not mandatory that the full-time limit be taken to do that. We can always do it quicker than the deadline. The problem is when the deadline is being negotiated away, and that's what this was intended to address. And that will conclude my testimony. I believe that Carol Monroe covered this very well, and we support her comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, our next speaker.
Our last speaker signed up is Teresa Rosenberger. Ms. Rosenberger?
If anyone else is going to raise their hand, I would ask you to do that during the speaker so we can move on quickly.
Great. Thank you, Senator and members of the committee. Teresa Rosenberger. I work for Divine Millimet, and I'm representing the New Hampshire Telephone Association. I'm not going to go over what everybody else has said, but the Telephone Association would like to work with Senator Bradley, others on Section 2. We do have the same concerns, one about consistency with the feds and the New Hampshire rules, and also, as Attorney Dean said, the 60-day passage. So we would like to be part of the group that works on an amendment for Section 2. As to Section 3, we had worked last year with Senator Bradley, Senator Khan, Carol Monroe, Carol Miller, I think, was still in her government job at that point, and all the providers on language that we thought would help not only get the information to the municipalities of who the providers are, all the providers in the municipality, but also would move up the RFI process and make sure the information was accurate. We would love to work with Senator Ward to review that language again and see if there's any possibility any of that can be worked into an amendment, so that all providers will be notified if there is going to be an RFI. So I would respectfully love to work with Senator Ward, the providers, and Senator Bradley and providers on language, and within 2 weeks. And thank you for the time.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, are there any hands raised?
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
All right, with that, we'll call this hearing concluded and see if we have a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Birdsell, seconded by Senator Susie. All right, to call the rolls. Senator Birdsell,
Senator Bertzel, yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoco,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. We are in executive session. I sent out a list to the committee members last night of bills that I thought might be ready to exec on. We can go down through those. If anyone has, comments or questions or wants to move a bill to the top of the list, let me know. Seeing none. Senate Bill 43 was the first one that I had on my list.
I would move ITL on Senate Bill 43.
Senator Birdsell moves ITL on 43. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Senator Ward seconds that. Discussion. I would, I guess, like to offer some comments. I think that right now the political situation is very charged. That this, I believe, needs a lot of study if it were to be done, how it would be advantageous to New Hampshire as a whole. I don't believe that I'm prepared to have all of those discussions and stuff to support this session. And I would support the ITL motion. Comments from the other senators?
While I find it intriguing because I know how I've been watching it work in Maine, I'm just not sure that we're ready here in New Hampshire for something like that. But it'd be worth looking into when we have a little bit more time, I think.
Other comments? If not, then I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Senator Bertzel votes yes.
Senator Ward,
Votes yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Rebecca Perkins, Perkins Cuoco. I'll get it.
It's all good. Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion to
Move consent.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to move it to consent. I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Senator Bertzel votes yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoco,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So, and I will take that one out.
Okay.
The next two, not on my particular list, was 46 and 47. 46, I think that Senator Perkins Cuoco is working on an amendment, and I will check with her later. I just got some information from the Secretary of State's office in response to a letter that Rochester wrote to them. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if that'll affect your amendment or not.
Okay.
And 47, this same information that's in here in Senator Susi's bill is also contained in some of the omnibus bills that we're hearing later. So I don't want to take a position on this until we've actually heard the ones in the omnibus bill.
Thank-
Something different, let me know. But I think that that's the right thing to do. Okay, moving on. Senate Bill 52. There's a couple of ways that this can happen. I don't know about the other committee members, but I went back and reviewed the city charter in Rochester and how this is handled there. Looked at the Nashua information, and I'm left with the opinion that this may be a situation where Nashua needs to step up and do the right thing. And that may be a charter amendment. It may be electing officials that support this idea or some other thing. But because it's one of those things that that I would think either a motion to study or a motion to re-refer might be the appropriate means. If you re-refer it, then you know we got to handle it first thing in January the coming year. If you study it, then that would give Senator Avard and anyone else that's representing Nashua a time. So I guess I would prefer the study comments from other people before we take Senator Susi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did speak with the city solicitor in Manchester. As you know, it was brought up a couple of times. Manchester probably has one of the, for lack of a better adjective, strongest tax caps. It's not just a spending, but it's also a revenue cap. And there were a number of concerns raised. And I think many of them were also raised by Cordell Johnson about the language provided in Senate Bill 52. I did not hear from any of those who testified, and I had missed the beginning part of the hearing, so I did go back and listen. This does seem to be a problem within the city of Nashua, and I believe that the statute currently has provisions in it so that if the citizens wanted in this municipal election to move forward and to change the language of their tax cap in light of the Supreme Court decision, those avenues exist to them currently. I think what the language would in fact do, though, is not address a problem in Nashua, but in fact disrupt all of the other communities in the state that have existing tax caps that are working. So I don't support this legislation. I think it would cause problems for many other communities. I don't know if there's something that warrants study here, but I just can't support the legislation as it currently stands.
Excuse me. My comments on the study is I don't want to ITL it if there's something out there that I don't see, and the ITL would preclude it from coming back next year. That would not be a good thing in my opinion. Re-refer means we'd have to take it up sooner than what I think would be comfortable in doing that. And so study, if Senator Avard is the one that does that, then Senator Ward, I noticed you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not ready to do very much with this. I really need some more time to check with some of the towns in my district and see what they have. So I would prefer to hold off whether it's being better to re-refer. Either way is fine with me, but I need some more time to get some more information.
shall we hold this until at least next week for any exact action? Since we don't have a motion, it's very simple to do that. Do I have objection to that? Seeing none. All right, we'll move on to the next one. I guess Senate Bill 79 was the next one on my list.
Oh, that's right. We did 53, didn't we?
Yep, 53
Okay.
is on the calendar. And 79 is relative to the authority for the moderator to verify counts. I guess the thing that I was thinking about on this one was a motion to re-refer. We have a bill in front of us right now that talks about doing audits and how those audits would be conducted and having a committee make a recommendation. I think this one comes back into that same arena, that there could be lots of insight into that. I want people to know that one of the things that's out there is the Wyndham issue, and that there was a significant difference between the count on election night by the machines and the recount that was done over at Archives by the Secretary of State. Certainly, that would go to this issue. That would say that there is something out there that either the procedures we used for the recount, or there was something that happened with those machines in Wyndham. And one of the things that I proposed is in the legislation on the audits is that the Secretary of State would be able to scan some of the ballots from various communities and then conduct the audit the way the scanning machines actually would assign a serial number to each one of the ballots, that then you can compare the vote as it was recorded in the machine with the vote that you physically can see on the ballot. All right, and that's one of the things that the Secretary of State got from the last high-speed scanning device that we got. And if one of those sets of ballots that we used were from Wyndham, we could not only do an audit on the Wyndham thing, we would actually have another machine count in that audit, and that would provide us much greater clarity in what went on in Wyndham. Not saying that that will happen. The bill would have to pass, and then Wyndham would have to be selected as one of those communities, all those things. But with all that said, I'm not sure that I want to have the moderators right now be the one who decides whether or not we're going to do a hand count on the, it was the governing body, the legislative body, excuse me, I believe, that makes the decision to use the machines to tabulate the votes. And certainly I would think that if we did this, that they should be involved. But again, if we re-refer it, we will have time for the committee, if it is established on the other bill, to give recommendations, and they can also take up this issue of whether the moderators should be able to do a recount. Questions, comments from others?
Do you want me to make a motion to re-refer, Mr. Chair?
Since I don't see a lot of comments, that would be my preference, yes.
So moved.
I will second that.
Okay. Senator Birdsall and Senator Ward, additional comments from anybody on the committee?
Could I
Seeing
just
none,
say, Mr. Chairman, I do agree with what you said earlier about the Wyndham issue still being an issue of concern, I think, to a number of people and frequently pointed to as reason for some of this legislation. So I think it's important that we do something with this legislation to show that we're serious about looking at ways to continue, once again, to improve transparency in our process.
okay, thank you. On the motion to re-refer, seeing no other comments, Senator Birdsell,
Senator Birdsell votes yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have a further motion?
Move consent.
Senator Susie,
Second.
and it's been moved and seconded.
Who seconded it? Sorry.
Senator Birdsell,
Senator Birdsell, yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. It is on consent.
Who would like to take it out?
Senator Birdsell has her hand up.
And I'm sorry, who seconded that motion to consent?
I
I
did.
heard
I
you
think I
made
did.
the motion, Senator Birdsell.
Huh?
I said you made the motion. Who
Oh.
seconded the
I
motion?
made the motion.
Oh, see, I'm off. Okay, thank you.
You're getting me confused, Trisha.
I know.
For consent.
My head was down. I couldn't see.
Okay, the last one that I had on the list is 80. And certainly this is probably going to be our most contentious bill of the day. I put it on the list because I think that both sides of the issue are fairly certain of the position that they have on this. And so I guess the first thing I will do is open it up for a motion.
I move ITL.
Senator Birdsell moves ITL,
I will second that.
seconded by Senator Ward. And I'll open it for discussion. I expected your hand to go up, Senator Susie. Then if seeing no other hands, I will.
Senator Perkins Quokka is going to say something because she's a co-sponsor.
Okay.
of the bill. That's why I was waiting for.
All right, I see your hand now.
Sure.
Senator.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd be curious just to hear the committee members, discussion on the decision to move ITL a little bit. I mean, I think you guys heard from me last week that, I think this is just an issue about the structure of our elections. And I think it's really important to do everything we can to make the voters feel, that we're having a very fair and transparent process. So I'd love to hear some more about the thought process there. I mean, I obviously am hoping that we can recommend this out to pass. But I recognize, that there are probably some differences of opinion here. So I'd love to just discuss it more.
Okay, I would like to comment on the bill. Much has been made here in the committee and also on the television yesterday, Sunday, where one of us were featured on Channel 9 about this bill having bipartisan support in the past. There are a couple of sentences that were very important to me in the original bill that are no longer in this particular version. There has been a Supreme Court decision on a couple of issues having to do with redistricting that also bear on this since that original bill was passed. And there has been conversations that I have overheard about strategies that would render our independent committee a lot less independent than would have been hoped. And we've also had similar bills vetoed by the governor in the past couple of years. So all of that put together, again, this is not that same bill that the Election Law Committee, I guess it was 2 years ago now, worked very hard on to get it. The selection of the committee, the way that the bill talks about it is that people would be able to sign up, and then there would be a selection of 10 members from that committee, from each of the groups, the Republican and the Democratic, the way it's worded. And that from that 10, then the opposite group would pick 5 off of that list. There are those out there that have said, well, you know, that's not a problem. What we will do is we will put pressure on all those people that we know so that only the 5 that we want sign up to begin with. Is that possible? Not possible? And oh, by the way, if someone signs up that we don't want, pressure will be brought upon them not to serve. Again, you know, when you take that and that is as bad as having, well, let me rephrase that. I believe that the people who know most about redistricting are the people who are serving the constituents right now, and to take them out of the process after the Supreme Court says it's an inherently political process doesn't serve the state well. And with all of that, comments from everyone else. Senator Bertzel.
So one of the things that that I find that bothers me so much is everyone that seemed to speak the other day basically put the sins of the father onto the legislature that is now. We are not the same legislature that we were in 2010, and we will never be the same legislature. In reality, there's very little that we're probably going to be able to do, at least until we get the numbers from the census. The districts are probably not going to change as much as people think we are. And frankly, anyone who takes anything that let's say the chair of the GOP had said, we do not answer to him. We answer to our constituents. So whatever he said out of his own. That is not something that I'm going to take into consideration when we're drawing our districts. I will listen to my constituents. So putting his words into our legislature, I think, is basically wrong. And in reality, the House flips every 2 years, just about. So the drawing of those lines, to me, were not what's considered gerrymandering. Granted, I don't like the process that the House used, but we understand what went wrong. I don't think we're going to do it again, or the House is not going to do it again. You have the Speaker understands the problems, and I'm sure he's going to correct those. And again, the Senate, the lines that we drew in the Senate have been very close. So as far as an independent districting, it hasn't really worked in many of the states that it's used. And that's where I land, so.
Senator Perkins Coker.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. And I guess to your comments, Chair, I wonder if there are some language changes, we could consider to accommodate some of the ideas you were talking about. I know we were waiting for some updated information from Representative Smith So that would be one of my comments to Senator Birdsall. You know, I totally appreciate the sentiment you're offering, and I think everything you said is probably, you know, offered in good faith. I think it's also just worth considering that there are many out there who, while they want to engage in the trust in that process, you know, do just feel that in 2010 there were some things done that made it hard for that process to be considered fully transparent. And so, having learned from those lessons, you know, I think the effort is simply to ensure that we all know what the rules are going in. And I know there's been a lot of partisan talk around this, but I do think the intent is genuinely to offer, you know, a fair set of rules for both sides.
And certainly, to whatever extent that I'm involved in the process, I also want it to be conducted fair for both sides. Senator Susie, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recognize the concerns that you expressed earlier about the membership of the commission, and certainly would entertain any thoughts you might have about how we could improve that legislation. I think what the legislation sets out to do, and there's certainly been a lot of polling around this issue in particular, and that certainly has broad bipartisan support. I think people feel like the process, and not even just speaking of 2010, but in general, people feel like the process isn't as transparent as they would like it to be. And I think they question whether or not we're harnessing the kind of expertise that we have. And yes, as individual representatives of our constituents, we do have an expertise in this process of communities of interest, but there's certainly a lot of others who view the process not through a political lens, but more through a statistical lens, through you know, a mapping lens, and would provide expertise to the process. So I view this legislation as a way to sort of harness some of that expertise, recognizing that in the end, it's a piece of legislation. So we are the final decision makers. And I think I, like Senator Perkins Cuoco, would certainly, you know, entertain any thoughts anyone might have. If there are ways to amend the legislation to make people more comfortable with the formation, we would do so.
Did I see your hand go up there, Senator Perkins Cuoco?
No, sir.
Senator Ward?
I think one of my biggest concerns is how can we make sure that this group of people from which we're going to make this commission, how do we assure that they are totally independent and not coming in with you know, strong political feelings one way or another? And I don't know how we can ensure that. And secondly, I mean, from my point of view, I'm perfectly happy with the Senate districts. And the one that really surprises me is the Executive Council District 2. That is an abomination. I just don't know however that thing got done. But other than that, if there was a way of absolutely assuring that whoever is going to be on this commission has no interest whatsoever in any political gains, but looking at the movement of people, where are the concentrations? How do we best represent them?
Senator Perkins Cuoco.
Yeah, just to add to the conversation, I know I probably haven't been through as many of these hearings as everyone else here, but could there be a mutual appointment process perhaps, where sides agreed on who was appointed? I'm just trying to explore ways to reach agreement here.
From my point, and I was very involved in the amendment to the bill that passed the Senate a couple of years ago, we discussed multiple ways of trying to pick that commission. And although I was not happy with the one that we finally ended up with, in my opinion, it was the best of all of the alternatives that anyone was able to come up with. We are now coming up against the time when this commission will need to do its work. If it were established. I think that there is only one member on election law right now, and that's Senator Susie, that will have a direct input in who goes on that. The other, members from the majority side will be picked by Senate President. And I can tell you that I believe that both the Senate President and Senator Susie are people of honor and will pick wisely in the committee members that do that work. I trust them both. And therefore, since we've had this bill, for the last 2 sessions, that it's time to let the process that we have go forward and ITL this bill. Any more hands? Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell. You have
Muted.
to unmute or you can't.
Sorry. For ITL, Senator Birdsell votes yes.
Senator Ward.
I vote yes for ITL.
Senator Susie.
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
No.
And the chair votes yes. That it does not have to go on. It will not go on the consent calendar. You can schedule me to take it out. And comments on any of the other bills that we have out there? I hope you all survive well in the snowstorm that we're going to get. I'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Susie, seconded by
Second.
Senator Ward. Senator Birdsell on the motion.
To come out of exec.
Executive.
Sorry.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Susie, seconded by Senator Birdsell. Call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Senator Birdsell votes yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Thank you, everyone.
See you Thursday.